Hey guys, what I want to do in this video is basically break down the hunt for the Big 8, how I went about putting a plan together, my reason and strategy behind shooting this buck. So 2011, this deer shows up September the 30th. I'd never gotten a picture of this buck before during summer or anything like that. I think he just showed up, maybe got pushed off of another property, moved from his summer area into my property. And then at the time, I had never gotten pictures of a buck like this before on our farm. Basically, our farm was a pass-through area for deer. You would see a lot of deer doing the rut, bucks cruising through, but nothing really called it home. And the reason why is it's a lot of mature hardwoods. This area has never been cut before. There's very few areas that have thick cover that a deer would bed in. So what I began to do around 2009, 2010 was go in there and start creating deer bedding areas, not just necessarily for bucks, but thickening up some areas, letting some fields grow up that were no longer used for crops or anything like that. Really thicken the area up, start attracting more deer, be able to hold them on your property during daylight. You've got a greater exponential chance of shooting mature buck if he lives on your property during the daytime. Because when they get up in the afternoon, they don't move far. They move basically to what is their staging area, and it's an area around their bed which they feel secure. And they'll go out to the edge of that to where they think that they could hear, smell, and see throughout the day. And they stop there until it gets dark, and then they really don't move forward. So you got to be close to these deer when you're hunting, and if you know where they're bedded, you can hunt them a lot more effectively. So I'm basically going to show you what I actually did to get on this deer and actually put an arrow in him. So I'm going to break down here basically what this farm looks like. So this red outline area here is a property boundary. So there's a neighbor that has about 20 acres in the center, so it's basically a really big U-shaped property with a river as one border, which is really good. A really long area here that you can access through the road. I can actually access up through here too. But typically, you know, growing up, what we always did was we walked in, we maybe parked down here at the pond and then walked along this white road into this area over here. And it didn't take long, and this area was ruined for hunting. You didn't see any more deer. If you did, they were just, you know, yearling bucks, maybe a doe family here and there, but nothing really that I wanted to shoot. So what I started doing was accessing the property along the border, you know, right along the property line. If I had a north wind, I'd come in along this southern property here and then walk perpendicular to my stand wherever that may be. So I've got a couple of stands, you know, just off of the property line. Now a lot of people don't like, you know, property line sitters, and I don't hunt for deer over here on my neighbor's property. I'm not really watching both sides hoping to shoot a deer over here. What I'm actually doing is trying to preserve the deer movement within my property. I want them to make big loops. You know, bucks like to cruise an area and make a big circle. So this is about a mile trip around this property once everything is tied together. So there's trails that I've created along here through bedding areas. Basically, that everything ties in together, food and cover, so these deer can make a big old loop around in my property, and I can hold them here during daylight as long as possible, so they don't wander off to my neighbors and get shot. Because deer, they cover a big area. You know, a mature buck might cover 3 or 4 miles at night, and sometimes much further than that. So the pictures that I was getting of that deer was in this food plot here. It's about a half acre of clover, and at the time it was half brassicas on this side and half winter wheat. So a lot of deer were using it. It's a big destination food source. Was getting 15 or 20 pictures of a deer every night in this food plot. But this deer shows up September the 30th. Never got any more pictures of him. I'd hunted a couple times around this food plot. I've got a shooting house here that now that when I built it, I didn't really know that you shouldn't actually hunt on a food source. Now, I hunt it a couple times in the early season if I've got a buck that's using this food plot. And in the late season, if I still have any food left, I'll go in there when it's really cold in late December, early January. So getting pictures of this deer right here in this little, this little side here, side of this food plot. Never got any more pictures of him. So the deer was showing up. That night he showed up at about 8:30, which is about an hour after shooting light. So that makes me think that he was bedded somewhere, either in my neighbor's cutover. These are all planted pines up here, or somewhere on my property right up here. So what I decided to do, and I didn't have a stand anywhere down here on the bottom, down on this river bottom. So what I did was, I'd heard a lot of people talk about hunting ridges, and this is a big bluff bank right here. It's really steep that drops off down into this field. I'm going to kind of turn this around a little bit so you can actually see some of the elevation change right here. So this is really flat right here. Let me zoom. Basically give you a better idea of what this looks like. So that deer was getting pictures up here. I'm thinking he's bedded over here. There's food down here, food up here high. So what I was expecting was to catch deer cruising, because it was a late October. I waited till the next cold front before I wanted to go in and actually hunt this deer. So I came in on a Sunday afternoon. I think while it was raining, maybe it might have been drizzling a little bit. Hung a stand up in a tree right here on the edge of this bluff, and this is kind of what it looked like. I pulled up this paintbrush here. So this is that point. The point kind of runs down this way. It's really steep off of this side, and this ridge runs back on up in this direction here. So I came in and set my stand up just not on the top of this ridge, but just off to the side a little bit. There's about 5 feet of elevation difference from the bottom of the tree and the top of the ridge. So my plan was to come around down the creek, come up to this flat area, and then walk straight up into my stand, climb up and be ready to catch any deer cruising along this ridge and this point, going off the end of this point. Well, that morning there was a westerly northwestern wind coming from this direction. I knew that anything bedded over here, basically up in this draw right here, would not be able to smell me. I walked in this way, so my wind was kind of being blown over onto my neighbors. I came down this creek, hopped out of the creek, walked right up to my stand right here, got up in a tree. Now let's go back to this paintbrush. So the reason why I chose this stand location is on a west wind, my wind's going to be blowing over top of any deer moving down below me, but I also have the thermals rising up to basically push all of my scent above the deer's nose, and basically be undetectable right here. It's a killer spot. Seen a lot of shooter bucks in this area. They don't always do what I want them to do. A lot of the times they may be over here on this side, cruising just out of range. It's really thick up on top of this point, or they sometimes they'll go around this point. So that point is right here. So I climb up in my tree. The deer walks basically, and this is the buck right here. The deer is down here along this bottom inside the tree line, and I expected him to go on around the point and not give me a shot. So my tree is right up in here. I think it might be this tree right there. The deer gets basically parallel with me. There's about 50 feet of elevation change right here. So he's not very far away, but I can't shoot him all the way down here. It's just too steep of a shot. It's kind of thick right in here. The deer walks right up the hill towards me, then basically turns to go back this way. And I think what that deer was doing is walking along here. I'm going to kind of draw this out here. I create a path. So the deer is walking along this way, and then walks basically up into his bed. I think right up in here. I think that's what that deer was doing. So let's get back to that picture. So he walks up here, I shoot the deer, he runs down here, as you can see in that recovery video. Really one of the greatest bow hunts that I've ever had, because I targeted this deer, put a plan in place, and killed him on the first set in that stand. So that's really important. Late October, that first cold front, hunting a brand new stand, and using your head to outsmart these deer. That's what becoming a really good bow hunter is all about. So if you want to know more about putting these things together, how to actually set your property up, creating deer bedding areas, creating food plots the right way, having a diversity of stuff in that food plot that makes them attractive year round, and where to actually place those plots so they flow within your property and allow you to hunt these deer successfully, and not basically destroy your property during the first couple of sets of the season. So you can check that out at whitetailhabitatconsultant.com, and I'll see you guys on the next video.